Que bueno, mi gente. Calix Boxing here for the hardcore boxing fans. Another podcast. Wanted to get a quick one out on the weekend. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. It is now Saturday, June 5th as I do this. If y'all hear squeak toys from the dog and kids yelling in the background, is because I don't have a soundproof podcasting room. So maybe you'll hear some of that stuff in the background as you go. So just forgive that. Hit that sub button as always. Hit the like button as always. Hit the alert so you know when I'm coming on when I do these. And all that good stuff. Instagram, Calix Boxing 2.0. Twitter, Calix Boxing. You'll see me on here quite often on with the HCP crew over at D Style Boxing, G Funky Boxing. So make sure to check those guys out as well, man. And I look forward to doing these fresh videos every single day, 7 days a week. Maybe I'll take a break on Sunday to celebrate God's greatness. But other than that, man, I'll be pumping these out at least 6 days a week. Fresh content, fresh boxing content, boxing always for the hardcore boxing fans. And I wanted to talk about Undisputed today. The reason I wanted to talk about Undisputed is we're actually getting some undisputed champions in a 4 belt era. And that's a beautiful thing because that leads to clarity. It leads to, in this short attention span world that we're in right now, it's just easier to explain to the casuals, hey, this is the champion in this weight class. This is the champion in this weight class. So the more we get that clarity, the better it is for boxing. This 4 division era started back in 1988. Been around for a while. And you know, I can already hear people say, "Oh, you're the belts gone wild guy." So you're saying Undisputed is actually a good. Yes, it is. Look, I hate all the belts. I hate all the sanctioning bodies. The silver belt, the bronze belt, the regular belt, the regular champion, the super regular champion, the super champion, the international champion. Too much chaos, too much going on, too much BS. And then beyond the 4 major belts, you have a bunch of other belts. Then you have a lineal champion. And we'll break down all of that and what all this means. But this is around and it's going to stay around. The sanctioning bodies aren't going anywhere. So as they're around, we need guys to collect the belts and the hardware that matter. And as they do, better fights are naturally going to happen. And it's going to be naturally better for boxing. It's going to create better fights. It's going to create better matchups. And it's going to create more clarity. And it's going to make the sport easier to follow from the casual standpoint. Of course, hardcore boxing fans, we know. I mean, we know this is the guy at this weight class, even though he might not hold 3 of the belts. He's still the guy in the weight class. You know, we know this stuff. But we need to make this easier to follow from the casual standpoint. Shout out friends P in the building. California Let Go Manny. Show these young guns how boxing should be. And yep, Manny doing everything that's right in boxing right now. And believe me, I'll be pumping up more Pacquiao content. Me and D-Style were on here talking about Pacquiao last night. So go check out that podcast on my channel. But Undisputed, man. Undisputed, it matters. It matters. Just to break this down, man, WBA started back in 1962. WBC 63 shortly thereafter. And then we had to wait another 14 years before the 3rd belt reared its ugly head, the IBF 1977. And then 11 years after that, the WBO, the youngest major sanctioning body, 1988. So we've had this around, what is that? My math isn't great. Is that 33 years? We've had the 4 major belt era of boxing. And since then, I think we've only had an undisputed champion. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I think we've only had it 7 times. So it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And it's not an easy thing to do, not only because it's just hard to do from a competitive standpoint, but it's hard with the business of boxing. that this guy's with that promoter, he's with this TV network, so they can't fight each other, even though both of them hold 2 belts apiece. We just can't get these guys in the ring together. So the business standpoint, more than the competitive standpoint, makes it more difficult to unify belts and then become undisputed. A unified champion is someone who owns 2 or more belts. The undisputed champion holds all 4. The lineal champion is the guy who beat the guy. You know, Klitschko was the lineal champion, although he was never undisputed. He was the lineal champion. Everybody knew he was the guy who beat the guy, and then Fury became the lineal champion, and he's held that, although off and on. But in the heavyweight division, let's just break that down. It's been since 1999, 22 years. And this is why I was frustrated with Fury versus Joshua being held off, because it's been 22 years since we've had a heavyweight champion, the heavyweight champion. In boxing deserves, look, heavyweight champ, even though we could call this a weak era of heavyweight division, right? The heavyweight division is the sexiest division in boxing, right? Historically, it's the sexiest. So you want a heavyweight champion. You want clarity there to show the casuals, hey, this is the baddest man on the planet. And there's no question about it. And that's what undisputed is, right? There is no disputing it. This is the guy in this weight class. This is the guy. Undisputed. And when you have the heavyweight champion, the baddest man on the planet, you want the heavyweight champion. You want that, the heavyweight champion. And that's what my frustration was with Fury versus Joshua being held up. It's not only the biggest fight that can be made in boxing, just historically, it's important. On a historical level, it's important. Just on a current level, it's important for the sport of boxing to point to that guy and say that it's undisputed. There's no disputing it. That's the baddest man on the planet over there. I'm pointing to him over there. That is the baddest man on the planet, and there is no disputing it. Fury is a unified champion. Joshua has twice been a 3-belt unified champion. And it's been since 1999 when Lennox Lewis beat Evander Holyfield that we've had an undisputed heavyweight champion. That's the last time we've been able to say with certainty that over there, it's not even disputed. That is the guy. That is the baddest man on the planet, Lennox Lewis. It's been 22 years since we've been able to say that with certainty, with clarity. And I've said it on this channel many times. Even after great fights comes confusion in the world of boxing. Right? And what I mean by that is you've all been as hardcore boxing fans to the fight parties where you're sitting there and you're watching the fight, but with that title of hardcore boxing fan comes frustration, because you have to sit there next to casuals and you have to explain what's going on beyond what you're seeing on TV. It's not only, oh, that's a jab right there, that's a straight right, that's why he's doing this, that's why he's doing that. They show somebody in the crowd and the fighters in the crowd, and you try to explain to them who that is. And it would be easier if you were to be able to say, okay, that is the champion in this weight class. It'd be much easier to say that instead of all the other stuff we have to say where, when Mayweather and Pacquiao were fighting and they were active, and you'd say, oh, he's a champion at 147 and he's a champion at 147. And then the casual is going to look at you like you have 5 heads and be like, wait, why are there 2 champions in one weight class? And then you have to go further and explain to them, actually, there are a lot more than 2 champions in one weight class. And that's the frustrating part about this. And that's why I became the belts gone wild guy. I can't stand it. There's a million belts, the participation trophy era. It's frustrating. But that's why I love what's going on right now, because you have fighters who are going for undisputed. You see it at 154 right now. You see Canelo going for it at 168. And that's why I get frustrated when I hear guys say, oh, Canelo's just fighting Euro bums. Why didn't he fight Charlo? Why didn't he fight this guy? Why didn't he fight that guy? Look, maybe Canelo versus Charlo in the short term would be a better fight than, say, Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders or Canelo versus Caleb Plant. In the short term, maybe so. But once again, even after great fights, a lot of times comes confusion. Because then you got to explain, well, he's a middleweight champion. He's a super middleweight champion. Why are they fighting in this weight class? Why did they fight at a catch weight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Where Canelo is bringing clarity to the table. He's getting rid of the confusion. He's saying, you know what? I'm going to unify this division, and I'm going to do it quickly. I'm going to fight this guy who has this belt in December. I'm going to fight my mandatory in February. Get rid of that real quick. By the way, I'm bouncing back, and I'm fighting the other guy with the other belt over here. So I've scooped up. Now I got 3, and I'm going for the 4th one in September. I'm getting this done quickly. And whether he's doing it for the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's besides the point. For me, as a boxing fan, I'm getting clarity. Too many times in boxing, it's like that book that it just never materializes, right? You're reading a book and you're like, when's something going to happen in this book? In Canelo's example, you're getting a chapter here and you're getting it quick. You're getting the Undisputed chapter from him. December, February, May, September, I'm handling my business. I'm becoming undisputed in this division at 168. That way you can tell your casual friends, guess what? We're talking about the super middleweights. I am the guy and you can't even dispute it. I have all of the hardware in this division that matters. And that's why it's important. The boxing world has come together and at least clarified this, that these 4 sanctioning bodies are the ones that matter. And these particular belts, because all these sanctioning bodies have multiple belts, even in the same weight classes, but these particular belts within these weight classes within these 4 sanctioning bodies are the ones that matter, are the ones that really matter. So when you become undisputed in Canelo's or Caleb Plant in September, let's say these 2 guys fight, when it's over, barring a draw, one of those guys, probably Canelo, is going to be able to say, I own all the hardware in this division that matters. Everything in this division that matters, I have it in my trophy case. And you can't dispute it. I am the guy in this weight class. And that's why it's important. And then you can sit on the couch comfortably after the fight and say, that's the guy at super middleweight. That's the champion. This was our Super Bowl. It was the same thing with Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. You can explain to your friends clearly, these are the 2 top guys at 140. Both of these guys you see on your screen hold all the hardware that matters in that division. And after the fight, barring a draw, one of these guys is going to hold all the hardware that matters in this division, and they're going to have it in their trophy case, and they're going to be able to rightfully claim, without any dispute, that they're the guy at 140. Despite what Tank Davis is out there saying that he's going to be a champion at 140 if he beats Mario Barrios, he's trying to win another baby belt. But the boxing world has deemed that Josh Taylor is the guy. And even if Tank Davis comes up and wins at 140, he'll be able to make a claim that he's a multiple division champion or 3 division champion or whatever he's going to say. But the boxing world has deemed that Josh Taylor's a guy at 140 and he holds all the hardware that matters. And this little baby trinket that Tank Davis is coming up to get is just a baby trinket. It's just a belt gone wild. It doesn't matter. So, and look, let's get to these comments. Canelo is my pound for pound king, not Crawford. That's a fair statement. It's a fair statement. The best fights because 2 or more promoters trying to milk. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, man. 7 times in 33 years, I think this has happened. So it's not so much the competition part of it that has held this up. It is the business side of it that has held up these real championships from happening. The real championships, the guy. And we need more guys that are the guy. And boxing is better overall when guys are going for undisputed. It leads to more clarity. You see Donaire. Donaire wins a big fight against Ubali. upset, 38 and a half, 39, whatever he is, and he wins. And then he says after the fight, the only thing I haven't done in my career is become undisputed. And I want to do that against Inoue if he wins this fight in a couple of weeks. And let's get this done and see who's undisputed. So you see more guys seeing what's going on. And I think Canelo's leading the way. He's leading the blueprint and saying, this is how you behave. You become champion, and then everything's going to come to you. Just look at Josh Taylor. A couple months ago, even some hardcore fans might not have known who Josh Taylor was. Most of us did, but some may not have. Now, everybody knows. And now, the boxing world is going to come to him. The big paydays are going to come to him because he's done something that very few people, only a little more than a handful of people have done in 33 years. He's been able to lay claim to the fact that he holds all the hardware that matters in his division. That's a big claim, man. That's a big claim to make. When you can hold all of those belts and say, these are the only belts that matter in my division, and I have all of them. Think of the power that comes with that. And I think you're going to see more fighters. You're going to see, I'm going to make a bold claim here. You're going to see just as many in the next 2 years, let's say 3 years, you're going to see just as many undisputed champions in these next 3 years that you saw in the 30 years prior. Because I think you're going to see more fighters come around and say, man, becoming undisputed is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal. Yes, we hate the sanctioning bodies. Yes, the business of boxing gets in the way. But man, what a big deal it is to become undisputed. To lay that claim that all of the hardware that matters in my division, I have it. That's an alpha move. It's an alpha move. And I think a lot of money comes behind it. You could say not so much for Terrence Crawford. You can make that claim, but Terrence Crawford, in my opinion, has made some business moves that don't serve him well, especially in the division that he's in. He's over there on Top Rank Island in his division, unfortunately, but which may have helped him to become undisputed when he was doing it, but not so much after. But even after great fights is confusion in the boxing world. And in this short attention span era, we need clarity. We need clarity. We need more of what's happening at 154 when you have two guys coming together with all the belts pretty soon here. And you need more of what's happening at 168 when likely two guys who hold all the belts are going to come together in September. You need more of what just happened at 140 when two guys who had all the hardware came together and settled it, right? You need more of what Donaire just did when he pulled a big upset and said, let's bring all the belts together and settle this. Let's settle it. You need more of what Terrence Crawford did again a couple of years ago against Ndongo and said, let's settle this. Let's settle this. You have the hardware. I have the hardware. Even if it's four guys who hold four different belts, figure it out. Tournament. They did it at 140. Prograis, Postal. All these belts were spread around. Taylor, Ramirez. They got together. Taylor beat Prograis. They handled their business. Taylor came together with Ramirez. Taylor wins. He's the guy. More of it, more of it, more of it. And yes, Belts Gone Wild isn't going anywhere. I'll still be on here with the Belts Gone Wild videos because you have all of these international belts and all this nonsense and the sanctioning bodies robbing fighters, all this stuff. But it's not going away. We can't be naive about that. And while it's not going away, and while we have signified as boxing fans and the boxing public in the boxing world that these are the four belts that matter, the guys who have those belts within each of these divisions, it's incumbent upon them to get together and figure this out. Figure it out. Like I was talking about with the stories and the books earlier. It's like a book. You need clarity. You need the story to develop. And you need it to develop sooner than later. Or it's not going to develop at all. More undisputed. More undisputed. Give me more guys who own these belts, who are getting together and getting this stuff done. Get it done. Get it done. And this could be the era of undisputed, man. I said it in my post the beginning of the year in January. This could be the year of the undisputed. We could have multiple undisputed champions in these weight classes. Unfortunately, with Fury versus Joshua, it's going to take a little longer to develop. Hopefully nothing spoils it. If there are upsets, hopefully the guys who pull the upsets can get together and we can settle this and we can have a heavyweight champion. We can have the heavyweight champion and it's not even disputed. That's was tough for me with this arbitration and the third Fury versus Wilder fight. And look, it's a good consolation prize. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be an entertaining bout. Fun, all that stuff. But, you could have had a heavyweight champion this summer. You could have had the heavyweight champion this summer. And that's a big deal. We haven't been able to say that for 22 years. And yes, we've been able to say Klitschko's a lineal champ, and then Fury is a lineal champ because he beat the guy, and Klitschko's the guy who beat the guy, and all this stuff. And this has been passed on from generation to generation to generation. But undisputed matters as well. And undisputed gives us clarity. It gives us clarity. You hold all the hardware, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, but it's important to say this. When you're undisputed, there is no disputing it. You are the guy in the weight class. As a hardcore boxing fan, you can sit there on your couch and tell the casual, hey, that's the guy at 140. That's the guy at 140. He is the champion. All the hardware that matters, yes, there might be a million belts and a million different sanctioning bodies, but all of the belts that matter, that guy has it. All of the hardware that matters within that division, that guy has it. He is the champion. The champion. So it's frustrating to me, frustrating to me that heavyweight is prolonging that, but I think eventually we'll get there. Maybe at the end of 2021, early 22, springtime or something like that. I have a feeling we'll get to undisputed at that point. We'll finally, after 22, 23 years, have the heavyweight champion. What up to Santiago Media, my boy. Bob Aaron's boxing, but not good for about. Look at Crawford, waste of prime talent. That's the thing with Crawford, man, that's frustrating to watch. The guy's 34 years old. 34 years old. We keep viewing Crawford as a young guy, and time is ticking. Time is ticking. Shout out D-Style Boxing. Time is ticking with Terrence Crawford, man. It's frustrating to watch him lay on the shelf over there on Top Rank Island at 147. It's frustrating. Man, that sucks. But it is what it is, man. And undisputed matters. We need more undisputed champions. It's great for boxing. It's great to say this is the guy in that weight class. So even after chaos, even after great fights, you still have confusion in boxing too many times because you still have to sit there and explain to your casual fans or even explain it to yourself why there are so many other champions within the division. But when you lay claim to all of the hardware in the division, man, that's an alpha move. That's a beautiful thing to have. WBA 1962, WBC 1963, IBF 1977, WBO 1988. Yes, too many sanctioning bodies just to name right there. And that's not even naming all of the other small belts in the alphabet soup. But since 1988, the four belt era, this hasn't been done too many times. It hasn't been done too many times. So we need to respect the guys who do it, who go after it. And that's why I get frustrated with the Canelo haters out there saying, oh, he's fighting this guy. He's fighting Billy Joe Saunders instead of fighting Charlo. Look, let's say he fights Charlo. Short term, it may be a better fight than, say, a Billy Joe Saunders. But we get clarity with Canelo cleaning out the division. They're trying to... I hope not. I hope we don't come into the 5-belt era and then it becomes even more difficult because we need clarity. It's better for boxing. But Canelo is doing us a service here. He's saying, look, I'm giving you clarity in this division. I'm doing it quick. And then after that, we can talk about catch weights, fighting guys at 160, maybe moving up to 175, fighting mandatories, all that stuff. But I want to clean this up as soon as possible. And it's easier for Canelo to do because he has a lot of leverage, right? Everybody wants to step into the ring with him. Everybody wants the big payday. But the big hindrance to only 7 guys being able to do this since 1988 isn't the competition aspect of it, although that's part of it. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's more so the business side of it that is a hindrance to guys being able to say, I'm the guy in this division, as we see with Fury versus Joshua. It's a frustrating thing to watch within the sport of boxing. And the more clarity we get, man, I hate to sound like a broken record, but the more clarity we get, the better it is for boxing, because it's just easier in the short attention span of a world that we live in to explain this to people, to sort of evangelize them into the sport and get them to follow this, because it's just too difficult to follow. There's too much that comes along with becoming a fan of boxing, especially if you get into this thing late. If you're not brought up on this young, man, it's a tough thing to get into. Claim the IBO. That's right. IBO been big at heavyweight since Lewis. Don't know why. It's just frustrating that 22 years since we've been able to say with certainty, although we knew Klitschko was the guy. I mean, let's be honest, the lineal champion. But still, it's another thing to say without any dispute, this is the guy in the division. Unified champion, 2 or more belts. That's a great achievement in itself. Lineal champion, great achievement in itself. The guy who beat the guy. But undisputed, to me, is a whole nother level, because it's tough to bring those 4 belts together. And you hold all the hardware that matters in that division. Big thing, man. Big thing in boxing. I love what Canelo's doing here. And that's why I hate to see the criticism of it. Although Crawford beat Ndongo to become undisputed, still a great achievement in my opinion. Not all undisputeds are equal, I guess. Some are easier to get to than others. But that's a great thing to be able to say. I mean, it's almost punching your ticket into the Hall of Fame. It really is. I mean, great achievement. When you can say I'm one of 7 guys to do this in 33 years, woo! Quite the achievement. Quite the achievement. So I'll still be the belts going wild guy. Don't worry. Just because I'm pushing undisputed doesn't mean I won't continue to be the belts going wild guy. You'll still get that from me. But I just want more guys who have these belts that matter in the division, these 4 belts, to come together and somehow get this stuff done to where we could have more clarity in this boxing world. I think we're going to get it hopefully at 118. We're going to get it at 154. We're going to get it at 168. We just got it at 140. I mean, just think about that. This hasn't happened too many times in 33 years, but guys in these divisions are starting to figure it out, in my opinion, that this holds a lot of weight. This achievement holds a lot of weight. So, well, Vitaly retired. Vladimir was clearly guy, but it was disputed. That's right. As hardcore boxing fans, we could all look each other in the eye and say, obviously, Klitschko's the guy. The guy barely lost a handful of rounds in 10 years. So we knew he was the guy, but you could still, I guess, dispute it. As tough as that would be to do, you could still dispute it. But when it's not disputable, when you're undisputed, quite the achievement. So I just wanted to get in here, get my thoughts in a quick half hour, man. Thanks to the people who tuned in. Thanks to the people catching the archive. Hit that sub button. Hit the like button as you come in. Yeah, man. Follow me on here. Follow me on Instagram, CalixBoxing 2.0, Twitter, CalixBoxing 2, and more undisputed. Y'all have a great weekend. I'm out, man. God bless. Peace.